Hey, welcome back. There's many reasons why outsourcing your IT operations to a managed service provider or MSP can make good business sense for your organization. But as you start to shop for an MSP or even reevaluate your current MSP, there's going to be some questions you're going to want to ask them. So I want to share with you my top 3 questions that I would want to ask my MSP. In the world of IT, if you're an administrator, you have permissions to do just about anything you want within your organization. View email, have access to sensitive financial applications, have access to workstations and servers, you name it. That's just the name of the game in IT. But that introduces a lot of risk. So the first question I want to ask my MSP is, how do you govern access and control to my data? Let me explain. So those administrators at that MSP, how are they hired? How are they doing background checks on those admins? How are they being vetted? Are they trustworthy? How do you trust them? And then the second part of that is, do they have standing access to all of my IT assets, or do they have to go through a process of which they have to request access and somebody has to approve them? And then when they do request access and get approved, do they get full access, or do they get just permissions they need to do their task? And then is a time bound to maybe an hour, 24 hours, and then at the end of that period, they lose all access. So what does that look like? And then when they go to access my IT assets, do they use a second form of authentication? So in addition to a username and password, do they have a push notification on their phone, or a phone call, or a USB key, or some second form of authentication? And then the other thing I'm going to want to understand is, how are you auditing? How are you logging all of that activity? So that if something does happen, because look, those administrators are human just like everybody else, they're susceptible to email phishing and so on. How are you auditing all of that? And then lastly, when it comes to those IT administrators, I want to understand, when they go to leave the organization, how do you make sure that they can't come into my systems and try to take any of my data? Hey, it's 2021 and cybersecurity must be a priority. And so the second question I'm going to ask my MSP is, what does your cyber incident response plan look like? What I mean by that is, you can't protect against everything. And so when I get hacked, I want to know, what does my MSP do about it? What's their plan to respond to that breach? How do they come in and contain that breach? Do they escalate to the vendor? Is there any tools that they'll come in and use? What does that service level agreement look like? How fast are they going to be able to respond to that? What kind of internal processes do they have to make sure they go through all the right steps? You're going to want to make sure you understand that, because when I select my MSP, I want to go with an MSP that has a good incident response plan, because that day it's going to happen. I just need to make sure that somebody can come in and help to contain that breach, and then help clean up, and then work with me in an after action plan to help make sure that we can minimize the chances of it happening again. So I'm going to want to understand, how do they respond to cybersecurity incidents? In the age of the cloud, these service providers are constantly innovating, and those cloud providers are releasing new capabilities and features on a monthly, weekly, and even daily basis. So the third and final question I want to ask my MSP is, how do you continuously monitor and reevaluate solutions to optimize costs? So what I mean by that is, quite simply, as these providers are coming out with these new features, sometimes they can actually replace solutions that I own with capability that I already own because it's part of that cloud service, thus consolidating the number of solutions I have and saving me money. And so I want to know from the MSP, how are you staying on top of that new technology? How are you constantly reevaluating? What's that process look like? And then in our monthly or quarterly business reviews, what are you going to do with me to help make sure I'm running the latest and greatest, but also not paying for things that maybe I don't need because they're already included in this other service? So if you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully this helps you out. There's a lot more questions you can ask. So what are some of the questions you might ask? Put them down in the comments below and let's take a look. All right, everybody, take care. We'll see you in the next video.